Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked around. The Tau Ceti training facility was bigger than he had expected. Metal buildings stretched across the red desert as far as he could see. Strange ships from different worlds sat on landing pads nearby. "Welcome to hell, rookie," said Corporal Danny Chen, walking up beside him. Danny had been at the facility for 2 months already. "Hope you're ready for the hardest training of your life." Jake picked up his bag and followed Danny toward the Yad main building. Other humans walked around the base, but Jake also saw aliens. Some looked like giant lizards. Others had blue skin and 4 arms. One group had crystal-like bodies that sparkled in the sunlight. 12 different species train here, Danny explained. All learning to fight together against the Void Swarm. That's the enemy that's been destroying planets across the galaxy. They entered the main building. The walls were covered with battle plans and star maps. Jake had heard stories about the Void Swarm back on Earth. Ships that could think as one mind. Weapons that adapted to any defense. So far only humans had managed to beat them in battle, and even then just barely. "Morrison, Jake." "Lieutenant," a voice called out. Jake turned to see a tall woman with pale skin and dark hair. She wore a black uniform he didn't recognize. Her eyes were an unusual silver color. "I am Commander Lydia Voss," she said. Her voice had a slight accent that Jake couldn't place. "I will be your training instructor for combat techniques." Jake saluted. "Yes, ma'am. We begin tomorrow at 600 hours, Lydia said. She looked at Jake carefully as if studying him. "Bring your fighting spirit, human. You will need it." As she walked away, Danny whispered, "That's one of the sanguine species. They're from the Crimson Nebula systems. Weird bunch. Super strong, super fast. But they never eat in the cafeteria. Maybe they have different food needs," Jake said. Danny shook his head. "Some of the guys think they're vampires. You know, blood drinkers. Old Earth legend stuff." Jake laughed. "Come on, Danny. That's just stories." "Maybe," Danny said. "But I've never seen one of them eat real food. And they're always pale, like they never see sunlight." That night, Jake couldn't sleep well. He kept thinking about Commander Voss and her strange silver eyes. When morning came, he put on his training gear and headed to the combat room. Lydia was already there, stretching. She moved like a dancer, every movement smooth and perfect. "Good morning, Lieutenant Morrison," she said without looking at him. "Good morning, ma'am. Today we learn hand-to-hand combat techniques. Your human fighting style is interesting, very unpredictable. This is good against the Void Swarm." They started with basic moves. Jake quickly learned that Lydia was incredibly fast. Her punches came so quick he could barely see them. When he tried to grab her, she seemed to flow out of his reach like water. "Your reflexes are too slow," Lydia said. "Think faster, move faster. The swarm will not wait for you to decide." Jake tried harder. He used tricks he had learned in Earth military training. Instead of trying to match her speed, he tried to guess where she would move next. Sometimes it worked. "Better," Lydia said. "Humans think in ways other species do not. This is your strength." During a water break, Jake noticed something odd. Lydia had a small cut on her hand from the training equipment. Most people would have asked for a bandage. Instead, Lydia just ignored it. "Shouldn't you take care of that?" Jake asked, pointing to the cut. Lydia looked at her hand. "It is nothing," she said quickly, too quickly. They continued training for 2 more hours. Jake was getting tired, but Lydia seemed as fresh as when they started. Her movements never slowed down. She never seemed to breathe hard. Near the end of the session, they were practicing with training weapons. Jake had a practice sword, and Lydia had 2 short fighting sticks. They moved around each other in a careful dance. Jake saw an opening and moved forward quickly. Lydia blocked his attack, but one of her sticks hit a broken piece of metal equipment. The sharp edge cut her wrist. "Damn," she said, looking at the wound. Blood ran down her arm. Then Jake saw something that made him stop moving completely. Lydia lifted her wrist to her mouth. Without thinking about it, she drank her own blood from the cut. Not just to taste. She actually drank it like someone drinking water. She looked up and saw Jake staring at her. For a moment, her silver eyes went wide with shock. "You should not have seen that," she whispered. Jake didn't move. He couldn't move. Everything Danny had said about vampires suddenly seemed possible. Lydia stepped closer to him. Her voice was very quiet, almost scared. "In my culture, witnessing a blood drinking is sacred. You have just proposed to the vampire Empress." "What?" Jake managed to say. "I am not just Commander Voss," she said. "I am Empress Lydia Voss, ruler of the Crimson Nebula, and according to my people's laws, you have just asked to marry me." Jake felt the world spinning around him. "But I didn't. I just saw." "It does not matter what you meant," Lydia said. "What matters is what you did. You watched me feed and did not run away in fear. This means you are either very brave or very stupid." She stepped even closer. Jake could smell something like flowers and metal on her. "Either way," she whispered, "my people will expect an answer. Will you accept the engagement, or will you face execution for insulting the vampire Empress?" Jake opened his mouth, but no words came out. In one training session, he had gone from learning combat techniques to accidentally proposing to an alien, Empress, and she really was a vampire. The training room suddenly felt very cold and very quiet. Outside, Jake could hear other soldiers training, living their normal lives. They had no idea that everything had just changed. Lydia was still waiting for an answer. Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the artificial light. Jake realized his life would never be simple again. Jake sat in his small room staring at the wall. 3 hours had passed since Lydia told him about the proposal. He still couldn't believe it was real. A knock came at his door. "Come in," he said. Captain Ryan Torres entered looking serious. Behind him came Lydia, now wearing a different uniform. This one had gold markings and strange symbols. "Lieutenant Morrison," Captain Torres said, "we need to talk." Jake stood up quickly. "Sir, I can explain." "Sit down, son," Torres said. "This is bigger than anything you can explain." Torres pulled out a communication device. A hologram appeared showing an alien with pale skin and red eyes. The alien wore robes covered in jewels. "Lieutenant Morrison," the alien said in a deep voice, "I am High Chancellor Marcus Dren of the Sanguine High Council. We have received word of your proposal to our Empress." Jake looked at Lydia. She nodded slightly. "Sir, I didn't mean to propose to anyone," Jake said. "I was just training and—" "Intent does not matter," the Chancellor said. "Only action matters. You witnessed our Empress feeding and did not flee. This is the ancient way of proposing marriage among our people." Captain Torres leaned forward. "Jake, the sanguine species has laws that go back thousands of years. We can't just ignore them." "What are my choices?" Jake asked. The Chancellor's red eyes seemed to glow. "You have 2 options. First, you may accept the engagement and undergo the transformation ritual to become one of our kind. Second, you may reject the proposal and face execution for insulting the royal bloodline." Jake felt his mouth go dry. "Execution?" "Our honor demands it," the Chancellor said. "No one may accidentally propose to the Empress and then reject her. It would bring shame to our entire species." The hologram disappeared. Captain Torres rubbed his forehead. "This is a diplomatic nightmare," Torres said. "Earth Command is freaking out. The Galactic Council is asking questions. And meanwhile, we still have the Void Swarm to worry about." Lydia spoke for the first time. "Captain Torres, may I speak with Lieutenant Morrison alone?" Torres looked between them. "Fine. But we need an answer soon. The Council is giving us 48 hours. After Torres left, Lydia sat down across from Jake. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I did not come here as just any commander. I came here in secret." "What do you mean?" "My people have been fighting the Void Swarm for 3 years," Lydia explained. "We have lost every major battle. Our tactics are too old, too predictable. The Swarm learns from every fight." Jake listened carefully. "But humans," Lydia continued, "humans keep winning against the Swarm. Not always, but more than any other species. We needed to understand why." "So you came here to spy on us?" "To learn from you," Lydia corrected. "Your people fight in ways we never considered. You change your plans in the middle of battle. You use weapons in strange ways. You think differently. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human soldiers were training with alien partners. My military advisors told me humans were just lucky, Lydia said. But after watching you fight today, I understand. You are not lucky. You are creative. I don't feel very creative right now, Jake said. I feel trapped. Lydia turned back to him. What if I told you that marrying me might save both our species? What do you mean? The Void Swarm is heading toward the Crimson Nebula, my homeworlds. If they reach us, 13 star systems will fall. Billions of my people will die. Jake stood up. How does marrying you help with that? Because, Lydia said, as my husband, you would have command authority over sanguine forces. You could teach our warriors to fight like humans. You could bring that creative thinking to our military. Jake walked around the small room. But I would have to become a vampire. The traditional ritual, yes. You would gain our strength, our speed, our long life. But you would also keep your human mind, your human way of thinking. What's it like? Jake asked. Being a vampire, I mean. Lydia smiled slightly. We are not the monsters from your old stories. We evolved differently than humans. Our bodies need blood to survive, but we are not evil. We have families, art, music. We feel love and fear just like you. But you live forever? Not forever, but much longer than humans. I am over 300 years old. Jake stared at her. You're 300 years old? Yes. And I have seen many wars. The Void Swarm is different from anything we have faced before. They adapt to every strategy. Traditional warfare does not work against them. Jake sat back down. Why me? You could have chosen any human to train with. I watched the battle records, Lydia said. The Battle of Wolf 359, where you saved your entire squad by using a broken cargo container as a shield. The defense of Kepler Station, where you turned maintenance tunnels into attack routes. You think in ways that surprise even other humans. I just did what seemed right at the time. Exactly, Lydia said. You see possibilities others miss. This is what my people need to learn. A communication alert sounded. Captain Torres's voice came through the speakers. All personnel report to the main briefing room immediately. Priority. 1 alert. Jake and Lydia hurried to the briefing room. Other soldiers were gathering quickly. On the main screen, Jake saw a star map with red markers. Torres stood at the front. We just received intelligence from long-range scouts. The Void Swarm has split into 3 groups. One group is heading for Earth. Another is moving toward the crystalline hegemony worlds. The third group, he pointed to the screen. The third group is heading straight for the Crimson Nebula. Estimated arrival time, 6 weeks. Murmurs went through the crowd. Jake looked at Lydia. Her face was pale, even for a vampire. All training programs are being accelerated, Torres continued. We need battle-ready units in 4 weeks. This facility is now our primary preparation base for the defense of 3 different star systems. As the briefing ended, Jake caught up with Lydia in the hallway. 6 weeks, he said. Yes, she replied. Not much time to prepare my people for a new way of fighting. What if we tried something different? Jake asked. What do you mean? What if instead of me becoming a vampire, we found a way to train your people and my people together? Mixed units. Vampire strength and speed with human tactics and creativity. Lydia stopped walking. That would require both species to trust each other completely. Yeah, Jake said. It would? She looked at him carefully. You would still need to accept the engagement. My people's honor requires it. But perhaps we could change what the engagement means. Change how? Make it a military alliance as well as a personal one, Lydia said. Show both our species that cooperation is possible. Jake thought about it. Earth was in danger. The vampire worlds were in danger. Traditional fighting wasn't working against the Void Swarm. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I'll do it. I'll accept the engagement. But we do this as partners, not just as ruler and subject. Lydia smiled, and for the first time Jake saw hope in her silver eyes. The news spread fast. Within 2 days, ships from across the galaxy arrived at the Tau Ceti facility. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. Ambassador Helen Brooks came from Earth with a team of diplomats. She was a small woman with gray hair, but she had sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said when they met in the conference room, "do you understand what you've done?" "I'm starting to," Jake replied. "This is the first time in galactic history that a human has been engaged to royalty from another species," Ambassador Brooks explained. "Every government is watching to see what happens." Dr. Amanda Gray, a scientist who studied alien biology, sat next to the ambassador. "We need to understand exactly what this vampire transformation involves," she said. "We can't let you go through with it if it's dangerous." At the other end of the table sat High Inquisitor Zalthor from the crystalline hegemony. His crystal body reflected light in rainbow patterns when he moved. "This alliance concerns us," Zalthor said in a voice like breaking glass. "If humans and vampires combine their military strength, it could upset the balance of power in the galaxy." "Right now," Captain Torres said, "the only balance of power that matters is stopping the Void Swarm." Lydia entered the room wearing her royal robes. Several sanguine advisors followed her, including Commander Beth Williams, who was apparently Lydia's closest friend. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Brooks said, standing up. "Please sit," Lydia said. "We have much to discuss and little time." Dr. Gray opened her notes. "Commander Voss, Your Majesty, can you explain what your people are exactly? Are you really vampires like in human legends?" Lydia exchanged looks with Beth Williams. "We are what your people might call vampires. Yes, but not the monsters from your stories." "How did your species evolve this way?" Dr. Gray asked. "Our homeworld, Sanguina Prime, lost its plant life during an ice age 5,000 years ago," Lydia explained. "The animals that survived had rich blood with special nutrients. My people adapted to survive by consuming blood instead of plant food." "And you need human blood specifically?" Ambassador Brooks asked. "No," Beth Williams answered. "Any blood with the right nutrients works. We have created artificial blood for centuries. Drinking from living beings is mostly ceremonial now." Jake felt relieved. He had been wondering about that. "What about the transformation ritual?" Dr. Gray asked. "It changes the human body to process blood nutrients," Lydia said. "Enhanced strength, speed, reflexes, extended lifespan. But the person remains fundamentally human in mind and personality." Zalthor leaned forward. "And what military advantages would this alliance provide?" Jake decided to speak up. "Maybe I should explain something I've noticed about fighting the Void Swarm." Everyone turned to look at him. "The swarm learns from every battle," Jake said. "Every time we use the same strategy twice, it adapts. Traditional military thinking doesn't work because traditional thinking is predictable." "Go on," Ambassador Brooks said. "Humans win because we don't follow the rules," Jake continued. "We improvise. We do unexpected things. But we're not strong enough or fast enough to win big battles against the swarm." He pointed to Lydia. "Vampires are incredibly strong and fast, but they've been using the same battle tactics for thousands of years. The swarm has learned to predict them." "So you propose combining unpredictable human tactics with vampire physical abilities?" Zalthor asked. "Exactly," Jake said. "Joint units. Vampires and humans fighting together, thinking together." Dr. Gray made notes quickly. "That could work, but it would require unprecedented cooperation between species. It would also require trust," Lydia added. "My people have never shared military command with aliens before." "Neither have humans," Ambassador Brooks said. Captain Torres stood up. "We're about to get a chance to test this theory. Long-range sensors just detected a Void Swarm scout group heading for the mining colonies in the Kepler system. Small group, maybe 20 ships." "How far away?" Lydia asked. 12 hours at maximum speed." Jake looked around the room. "This could be our chance to try the joint unit idea." You want to take untested mixed crews into battle? Zalthor asked. The alternative is letting the swarm destroy those colonies, Jake said. Plus, it's a small group. If we can't handle 20 swarm ships with our combined forces, we'll never stop the main fleet. Lydia nodded. I agree. Commander Williams, how many of our warriors are at this facility? 50, Beth replied. All experienced fighters. And we have about 60 human marines, Torres added. Mixed teams of 2 humans and 2 vampires, Jake suggested. Vampires provide strength and speed. Humans provide tactical flexibility. Dr. Gray looked worried. But Lieutenant Morrison hasn't undergone the transformation yet. How can he coordinate vampire forces without their enhanced abilities? The transformation can wait, Lydia said. For now, we test the cooperation. If it works, we can proceed with the full alliance. Ambassador Brooks frowned. This is moving very fast. The swarm doesn't wait for diplomacy, Jake said. 3 hours later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay wearing full combat gear. Around him, human marines checked their weapons while vampire warriors adjusted their black armor. Danny Chen walked up to him. So we're really doing this? Fighting alongside vampires? Looks like it, Jake said. And you're really going to marry their queen? Jake looked across the bay where Lydia was talking with her advisors. If we survive this battle, maybe. Sergeant Lisa Parker joined them. The vampires are strong, she said. I saw one of them lift a 2-ton equipment crate like it was empty. Good, Jake said. We'll need that strength. The vampire warriors moved with perfect coordination like dancers. Their weapons were different from human guns, energy blades and plasma rifles that required incredible reflexes to use properly. Lydia approached wearing black battle armor. Are your people ready, Lieutenant Morrison? As ready as we can be in 3 hours, Jake replied. The swarm scouts will reach the Kepler colonies in 8 hours, she said. Our ships can intercept them in 7. Jake nodded. What's the plan? Normally, my people would attack in perfect formation, Lydia explained. Coordinated strikes, predictable patterns. But you said the swarm adapts to predictable patterns. Right. So what do we do instead? Lydia smiled. We let the humans decide. You create the chaos, we provide the power to make it work. Organized chaos, Jake said. I like it. As they boarded the transport ships, Jake realized this was either going to be the best military innovation in galactic history, or a complete disaster. But looking at the determination on both human and vampire faces, he was starting to think it might actually work. The transport ship lifted off, heading toward what would either be a great victory or a terrible defeat. Either way, Jake thought, it wouldn't be boring. Behind them, Ambassador Brooks watched from the observation deck. Think it will work? Dr. Gray asked her. With those 2 leading? Brooks said, pointing to Jake and Lydia as they planned strategy together. It might just work. The alarm woke Jake from a restless sleep. Red lights flashed in the ship's corridors as he ran toward the command center. What's happening? He asked Captain Torres. The Void Swarm changed course, Torres said, pointing at the tactical display. They're not heading for the mining colonies anymore. They're attacking Kepler 442b directly. Jake felt his stomach drop. That's a civilian world. 50 million people. 60 million, Lydia corrected, entering the command center. Her face was grim, including children. The tactical display showed the swarm fleet, not 20 ships but over 100. They were already entering the planet's atmosphere. They tricked us, Torres said. The mining colony attack was a diversion. They wanted us to move our forces away from the real target. Jake studied the display. How long until we reach Kepler 442b? 4 hours, the navigator replied. The planet's defenses won't last that long, Lydia said. Jake thought fast. What if we don't try to save the whole planet? What if we focus on evacuation? 60 million people? Torres shook his head. Impossible. Not all at once, Jake said. But we could save some of them. Hit the swarm hard and fast, create confusion, get as many civilians out as possible. Lydia nodded slowly. A rescue mission instead of a defensive battle. The swarm expects us to fight for territory, Jake explained. They adapt to defensive strategies, but they're not as good at adapting to rescue operations. Torres activated the ship's communication system. All units prepare for emergency combat deployment. This is not a drill. The next 3 hours were spent in frantic preparation. Jake worked with vampire warriors to plan attack patterns while Lydia coordinated with human marines on evacuation procedures. Sergeant Kevin Murphy, one of Jake's best soldiers, approached during the planning. "Sir, the vampires fight very differently than us. How do we coordinate?" Jake looked at the mixed teams around the room. Humans and vampires sat together, trying to understand each other's tactics. Murphy, pair up with Commander Williams. Jake ordered. "Williams, show him how vampire speed works in combat." Beth Williams moved so fast she seemed to blur. One moment she was across the room, the next she was beside Murphy. "Incredible," Murphy said. "But how do I keep up with that?" "You don't keep up," Jake realized. "You think ahead. Vampires are fast, but humans are unpredictable. Williams, instead of moving where you want to go, move where Murphy tells you to go." They tried it. Murphy would point to a location and Williams would appear there instantly. Then Murphy would give her a target and she would strike before the enemy could react. "It works," Williams said, surprised. "Your tactical thinking combined with our speed." Jake smiled. "That's the idea." When they reached Kepler 442b, the situation was worse than expected. Swarm ships filled the sky above the major cities. Buildings were burning. The planet's defense force was completely overwhelmed. "Landing zones are too hot," the pilot reported. "Heavy swarm presence everywhere." Jake studied the tactical display. "There," he said, pointing to a valley 20 kilometers from the capital city. "We land there and move overland." "That will take too long," Torres said. "Not if we split up," Jake replied. "Small teams moving fast, vampire speed, human planning." Lydia activated her command frequency. "All sanguine warriors, prepare for rapid deployment tactics. Follow human team leaders for target selection." The transport ships dropped toward the planet's surface. Jake felt his heart beating fast as they approached the landing zone. The first wave landed without resistance. Jake jumped out with his mixed team, 2 vampires and 2 humans, just as planned. "Danny, take point with your vampire partner," Jake ordered. "Lisa, you and your vampire watch our flanks. Move toward the city but stay unpredictable." They advanced through the rocky terrain. Above them, swarm ships flew in perfect formation, searching for threats. Jake's team reached the city outskirts first. Ahead, he could see civilian transports trying to evacuate people while swarm ground forces attacked. There, Jake pointed to a group of civilians trapped near a collapsed building. "Williams, can you get to them?" Beth Williams vanished and reappeared beside the trapped civilians. She began lifting heavy debris that would have taken humans several minutes to move. "Murphy, set up covering fire," Jake ordered. "Danny, we need a distraction." Danny and his vampire partner ran toward a group of swarm soldiers, moving in an erratic pattern that confused the enemy targeting systems. The vampires' speed made them nearly impossible to hit. Jake's team saved 30 civilians from that building, but there were thousands more across the city. "This isn't working fast enough," Lisa said through the communication system. Jake watched the swarm forces reorganizing to counter their rescue attempts. "They're adapting to our tactics already." Then he had an idea. "All teams, new strategy. Instead of avoiding the swarm, we're going to confuse them." "What do you mean?" Lydia asked from her position near the spaceport. "We make them think we're trying to capture strategic points," Jake explained. "But we're actually just creating chaos so civilians can escape." Jake's team ran toward what looked like a communication center. The swarm immediately sent forces to defend it. But just before reaching the building, Jake's team changed direction and headed for a group of trapped civilians nearby. By the time the swarm realized what was happening, the civilians were safe, and Jake's team was heading for a completely different location. "Brilliant," Lydia said over the radio. "The swarm is defending buildings while we save people." The strategy worked for an hour. Jake's forces saved thousands of civilians while the swarm chased shadows. But then everything went wrong. Jake was helping load injured civilians onto a transport when he heard Lisa scream over the radio. "Jake, Lydia's in trouble." He looked toward the spaceport and saw a massive swarm walker, a 50-foot-tall war machine, advancing on Lydia's position. She was moving fast, but the walker's plasma cannon was tracking her. Without thinking, Jake ran toward the battle. He was too far away to help, too slow to reach her in time. The walker fired. Lydia tried to dodge, but the plasma blast caught her in the shoulder, spinning her through the air. Jake reached her just as she hit the ground. Her armor was melted and blood covered her shoulder. "I'm fine," she said, trying to stand up. "No, you're not," Jake said. The walker was turning toward them, charging up for another shot. Jake looked around desperately. Nearby, a damaged civilian transport was leaking fuel. "Can you run?" he asked Lydia. "Yes, but not fast enough to escape that thing." "You don't need to outrun it," Jake said. "You just need to trust me." He helped her stand, then started running toward the fuel-leaking transport. "When I say jump, go left as fast as you can." The walker fired again. "Jump!" Jake shouted. Lydia leaped left with inhuman speed. Jake dove right, rolling behind the transport. The plasma blast hit the fuel leak. The explosion was enormous. The walker stumbled backward, temporarily blinded by the fireball. "Now!" Jake yelled. Lydia appeared beside the walker faster than Jake's eyes could follow. Using her energy blade, she cut through the machine's leg supports. The massive walker crashed to the ground. Jake ran to her, breathing hard. "Are you okay?" "You saved my life," she said, looking at him with surprise. "We're partners," Jake replied. "That's what partners do." Around them, the rescue operation continued. Human creativity and vampire speed were saving lives across the city. But Jake realized something had changed between him and Lydia. This wasn't just about military alliance anymore. When she looked at him, he saw something new in her silver eyes. Something that made his heart beat faster. "Jake," she said quietly, "when this is over, we need to talk about what this engagement really means." "Yeah," he said, watching her smile. "We do." The battle was far from over, but something important had begun. 3 weeks after the battle at Kepler 442b, Jake stood in the ancient temple on Sanguina Prime. Vampire priests in red robes surrounded him, chanting in a language older than human civilization. High Priestess Vera Constantine, her silver hair flowing down to her feet, approached with a crystal goblet filled with dark liquid. "Lieutenant Morrison," she said in a voice like music, "are you ready to accept the bond with our Empress?" Jake looked at Lydia, who stood beside him wearing ceremonial robes of deep purple. They had talked for hours about this moment. "I am," Jake said, "but we want to change the ritual." The priests stopped chanting. High Priestess Constantine raised an eyebrow. "Change the sacred ritual? This has not been done in 1,000 years. The galaxy is changing," Lydia said. "Our enemies are stronger than ever before. We must adapt or die." Jake stepped forward. "We don't want the traditional transformation. We want to create something new. A bond that lets us share abilities, without changing what we are." The High Priestess looked shocked. "Share abilities? Such a thing is theoretical only. Never attempted." "The Void Swarm has forced us to try many things that were never attempted before," Lydia replied. "This is another one." Dr. Amanda Gray, who had come to study the ritual, stepped out of the shadows. "Your Holiness, we've been studying vampire biology for weeks. We think it's possible to create a psychic link instead of a physical transformation." "A human scientist wishes to modify our most sacred ceremony?" one of the priests asked angrily. "A human scientist who helped save 60,000 lives at Kepler 442b, Lydia said firmly. "Dr. Gray's research showed us new possibilities. Jake had spent the last 3 weeks working with mixed human-vampire units. The results were incredible. Human Marines working with vampire partners had successfully evacuated the entire population of Kepler 442b. Only 500 people died, instead of the millions the swarm had planned to kill. But Jake had also learned something else. Fighting, alongside Lydia, Saving people together had changed how he felt about her. It wasn't just duty anymore. "Explain this new ritual," High Priestess Constantine said. Dr. Gray opened her research notes. "Instead of changing Lieutenant Morrison's biology, we create a mental connection between him and the Empress. He gains access to vampire reflexes and tactical awareness. She gains access to human creativity and intuitive thinking. And neither of us loses what makes us who we are," Jake added. The High Priestess considered this. Such a bond would be deeper than marriage. It would connect your minds, your instincts, your very souls. "Yes," Lydia said, looking at Jake. "It would." Jake felt his heart skip. During their planning sessions during the battle, he had begun to understand Lydia as more than just an alien ruler. She was brave, intelligent, and deeply caring about her people. She was also beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her vampire nature. "Are you certain about this?" Jake asked her quietly. "I have never been more certain of anything," she replied. The ceremony took place at sunset. Instead of drinking vampire blood, Jake and Lydia each placed one hand on an ancient crystal that pulsed with strange energy. "Think of what you most are. Want to share?" High Priestess Constantine instructed. Jake thought about the moment during the battle when he had seen Lydia in danger. The desperate need to protect her, to fight beside her, to never let her face danger alone. "Now," the High Priestess said. The crystal flared with brilliant light. Jake felt something like electricity flow through his mind. Suddenly he could sense Lydia's thoughts, her emotions, her incredible focus and determination. At the same time, he felt his own reflexes becoming faster, his awareness sharper, but he was still human, still himself. Lydia gasped softly. "I can feel how you think," she said in wonder. "So many possibilities, so many creative solutions. And I can feel your strength," Jake replied. "Your certainty, your tactical precision." They were still holding hands on the crystal when urgent alarms began sounding throughout the temple. Captain Torres's voice came through Jake's communication device. "Jake, Lydia, we need you at the command center immediately. The main void swarm fleet has been detected." Jake and Lydia looked at each other, their new mental bond allowing them to communicate without words. They both understood the same thing. This was what they had been preparing for. The command center was filled with representatives from dozens of species. The main display showed a terrifying sight. Over 10,000 swarm ships advancing toward the core worlds of the galaxy. "They'll reach the Crimson Nebula in 10 days, reported Admiral Susan Carter from Earth Fleet. "After that, they can strike at any major world." "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. "All species combined?" "About 3,000, Admiral Carter replied. "We're outnumbered more than 3-1, said General Boris Petrov from the Russian Space Force. Jake studied the tactical display, his enhanced awareness allowing him to process information faster than ever before. Beside him, Lydia's tactical precision was analyzing swarm movement patterns. "They're moving in perfect formation," Jake observed. "Yes," Lydia agreed. "Coordinated, predictable, efficient." "What if we don't try to match their formation?" Jake asked. "What if we do the opposite?" Ambassador Brooks leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Jake looked around the room at the many species present. "Every species here fights differently. Crystalline hegemony forces are defensive specialists. Aquarian Empire ships are fast scouts. Human forces are adaptable. Vampire forces are precision, strikers." "So?" Admiral Carter asked. "So instead of trying to create one unified fleet, we create chaos," Jake explained. "Every species doing what they do best all at the same time, with no overall pattern the swarm can predict." General Petrov frowned. "That sounds like a recipe for disaster." "Or for victory," Lydia said, understanding Jake's plan through their mental link. "The swarm adapts to order, not to chaos." "But how do we coordinate?" Admiral Carter asked. Jake smiled. "We don't coordinate. We improvise." The next week was spent in frantic preparation. Instead of unified battle plans, each species developed their own tactics. Human forces planned rapid strike missions. Vampire forces prepared precision attacks. Crystalline ships would provide defensive screens. Aquarian scouts would gather intelligence. Jake and Lydia worked together to create communication protocols that would allow real-time adaptation during battle. "This is either brilliant or insane," Captain Torres said as they finalized the plans. "Maybe both," Jake replied. The battle began at the edge of the Crimson Nebula. Jake commanded from the bridge of the Earthship Defiance, with Lydia beside him coordinating vampire forces. The Void Swarm approached in perfect formation, just as expected. Their ships moved like parts of a single organism. "All forces," Jake announced over the general communication channel, "begin random engagement protocols. No set patterns, no unified strategy. Fight your own way." What followed was the most chaotic space battle in galactic history. Human ships darted between swarm formations like angry wasps. Vampire forces appeared from impossible angles, striking with surgical precision. Crystalline ships formed protective barriers that the swarm couldn't predict. Aquarian scouts fed real-time information to anyone who asked. The swarm tried to adapt, but there was nothing consistent to adapt to. Every time they adjusted to counter one species' tactics, 3 other species would attack from completely different directions. "It's working," Lydia said, watching the tactical display. "Their formation is breaking apart." Jake felt a surge of hope through their mental link. "Press the attack, all forces, increase chaos protocols." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Void Swarm fleet was scattered and retreating. For the first time in galactic history, they had been decisively defeated. Jake slumped in his command chair, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," he said. "No," Lydia corrected, taking his hand. "We all did it. Every species working together." Later, as they stood on the observation deck watching the mixed fleet celebrate victory, Jake realized how much his life had changed. "So," he said to Lydia, "I guess we're really married now." She smiled, her silver eyes sparkling. "Are you having second thoughts?" "About marrying the most amazing woman in the galaxy?" Jake said. "Not a chance. Even though she's a vampire empress." "Especially because she's a vampire empress," Jake replied, pulling her close. Through their mental bond, he could feel her happiness, her love, her excitement about the future they would build together. The first interspecies royal wedding in galactic history was celebrated on Earth 6 months later. Representatives from every known species attended, but Jake and Lydia were already planning their next mission, establishing the Integrated Defense Corps, where humans and other species would train together permanently. "Think it will work long-term?" Jake asked as they watched human and vampire cadets training together. "With the right leadership," Lydia replied, "anything is possible." Jake smiled, feeling her confidence through their bond. Together, they had proven that the best way to face an uncertain future was with trust, creativity, and the willingness to become something greater than either could be alone. The galaxy was safe, at least for now, and Jake Morrison, who had started as just another human soldier, had become part of something extraordinary. He had accidentally proposed to a vampire empress, and it had saved the galaxy.